Thank you everyone for joining us today at the AI seminar. My name's Gail Powley. I'm president of Technology Alberta, and we're very pleased on a monthly basis to bring in companies that are actively using artificial intelligence or machine learning in their technologies, and that are local companies. So before I introduce the company today, I also am very proud to be wearing the I Love Alberta Tech shirt, which is a grassroots initiative by AltaML, who have just been sending out shirts to spread the word and build community. So they've done it on their own, and so the community is rallying around this. You'll see deputy ministers as well as other community leaders and companies wearing this shirt. If anyone wants a shirt, I can't make any promises. But Niraj is taking a list of people who are who would love a shirt if we could manage that. So I will just put that out there, and we'll see what can happen. And stay tuned for more words on that. So Technology Alberta is a grassroots community-led organization with the focus of growing the tech sector in Alberta. And we have a special heart for entrepreneurial tech companies that are doing innovative things like using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So these companies are across the province. Our board is half Edmonton, half Calgary. And we are very pleased to work with leaders from the University of Alberta and other universities on the adoption of these emerging technologies in industry. So with that, I'll also mention that we have something called the First Jobs Program, as well as the Next Level Jobs Program, that gives students from the tech areas as well as business areas opportunities to take on part-time jobs or summer jobs with some of these cool companies. So please go to the Technology Alberta website. And then, as mentioned, some of these opportunities are offered part-time at 10 hours a week. So really, we're trying to find an inclusive way for everyone to help build Alberta's tech sector. So next, I will move on to my co-chair, Justin Stevens. Really pleased to have Justin, who's doing his master's here at the U of A in computing science and AI/ML, and working with me to identify the cool tech companies that are not only using AI and ML, but are actually have a significant presence and are hiring here in Edmonton or in Calgary and across Alberta. So with that, Justin will be providing some closing words later today. I'll provide the opening words in welcoming our speakers from BioWare and Electronic Arts. And Alex, maybe I'll turn it over to you to talk about your company. And then I know you have a guest, a co-speaker between your, Alex, is this a good place to start?
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Gail. Yeah, hi everyone. Alex Lucas. I'm currently the Director of Quality Assurance for BioWare Studios here in town. I think most people, if you're an Edmonton native or at least at all interested in video games, are quite aware of our company. What you might not be aware of, though, is we've been wholly owned by Electronic Arts for 15 years now, hence the EA connection. And I'm proud to have Bill Gordon joining me from Electronic Arts Tiburon down in Orlando. He's the senior software engineer down there, and he's going to be showing off a lot of the great ML work that he's leading his team through. What I wanted to talk about a bit first, though, because there is a local angle here, and talk about, you know, my involvement via BioWare in the local ML scene, and in particular partnerships with academia. And I'd like to just provide a bit of background there as a way to maybe let any new developers, or frankly, you can be a seasoned developer and want to join us in the future, but especially for any students on the call, understanding kind of how we've been approaching engaging with the local community. And so, quick bit of background on me. I'm a computer science graduate, unfortunately, University of Calgary. please don't hold that against me. But I've been with BioWare EA now for about 18 years. Through most of that time, I was a software engineer and then technical director. And about 5 years ago, when I switched over to being more of a general director on QB, was around the same time that I was seeing a lot of applications in AI and ML that were actually starting to have impact in businesses. And while I had poked around in that technology, my background or knowledge of it was quite old by that point. I think the last neural net I wrote was in 1999. So you can imagine what a difference a decade or two makes. And so, what I started doing was reaching out and engaging with principally University of Alberta, but also National Research Council, and seeing what could we do, partnering with professors and their students, and there's even a couple on the call right now. I see that we're in active partnership, and this has really been such a great thing for BioWare and EA as a way to get exposure to what is frankly world-class talent coming out of Edmonton, and providing these opportunities for people to be involved in bringing ML solutions to bear in a space that maybe it's not immediately understood that there is value. And I think you'll see in Bill's following presentation that despite, I think, a general sense that, AI means, how your enemy characters or enemy players or maybe opponent sports teams behave in the game. It's not really that in terms of how we're actually bringing ML to bear at the company. It has a lot to do with how we develop games. So in my department, we use it for verification as well as detecting defects, but we also use it through our content creation pipelines, doing things like procedurally generating content. Games are getting bigger, more expensive all the time. This has been a huge tool for us, and so Bill's certainly going to be touching on that. But I want to say that at EA, in terms of places where we're hiring ML engineers and data scientists, it's all the way across the board, from right at the studio level on game teams to operational teams. EA has entire research and development organizations, and then there's big data, as well as different parts of the organization that are looking at employing this technology in marketing even, and so what I'm trying to say is that EA as a destination is a great one, and it's one especially invested in AI and ML talent. And then with BioWare, we're especially invested, especially here in the local scene. And so, following on, whether it's in the Q&A portion of today's talk, or you could reach me after the fact in LinkedIn. If you're local and you want to get involved with BioWare or EA, definitely let me know. That there's various angles through co-op engagements. There's the new NSERC Create partnership that EA and BioWare are a part of, as well as, frankly, we're just hiring people, so I'll kind of leave that as the pitch and maybe hand the mic over to Bill now.
Great pitch.
All right, let me get a few things set up here and I'll start a screen share. Okay, can you guys see everything okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Fantastic. All right, well, let's see here. Sorry, I'm just getting a few other things. I think I need another monitor or two. Okay, so today what I want to cover, certainly some of the things that Alex touched on. I'll give a quick introduction here in the next slide of who I am. And then I want to, the real meat of the discussion is the next topic, AI software in games. And I kind of struggled just trying to wrap my head around all the different AI that EA does as a whole. I'm in a unique position on the team I'm on, that I see a lot of the different AI, and it covers a lot. And so, during the discussion period at the end, we can, if you have any questions on, the types of EA, or I'm sorry, the types of AI that we do at EA, the applications or whatnot, I'll be happy to continue to cover it, because I probably have forgotten some, and I'll remember them when we get to the end. So, and then also to like what Alex just talked about, working for EA, just to kind of touch on what it is we're looking for and what it's like. I've been with EA about 8 years now myself, and so I can answer some questions on what it's like to work for this awesome company. And then obviously I'm going to leave some time at the end for questions and answers. So, all right, on to the introduction. My name is Bill. It's William Gordon, but I go by Bill because it's just less syllables and easier to speak. My background is electrical engineering. I went to Purdue University. I'm based out of Tiburon down in Orlando, Florida, and that's the picture of our new building that you can see. I started off in on the dev team side, and the Madden team and NCAA, our Tiger Woods game, our MMA mixed martial art, which now is our UFC game, on and on. There are quite a few games I've worked on and shipped, and my career has spanned mobile, embedded software, in a variety of different industries as well. So I'm happy to answer questions if you're curious what it's like to write, a flight simulator for the military, or anything else as well. So the team that I am on it's a central team, meaning that we support a variety of our game teams, and it's a really cool, exciting place to be, because we get to see really kind of what everybody is working on and be involved at a distance, and then provide solutions and opportunities to advance AI amongst other technologies to help our games play better, and to also the quality aspect of it. All right, so the AI software in games, this is the bulk of the presentation I wanted to cover today. And so really I wanted to touch on like the game software itself, traditional AI versus new AI, this new ML based AI, and then the overlap of testing and coding. So let's talk about game software in comparison to other software. That's actually an interview question I like to start with to open up the discussion, to see if candidates are even aware of the differences between game software and other software. Game software can be very different than other software because games have strict performance requirements. They have to be stable, they have to be fun, and they have to they can overlap with server and mobile applications as well. So as the future presses forward, we're seeing cases where someone on a mobile device would like to pause their game and for them to be able to pick it back up on one of our HD consoles, like a PlayStation 5, for example. So AI is definitely needed in our games. So AI is needed because it can help play the game in place of other people in the game. So it can also help play other characters alongside you. AI systems can help give instruction and guidance. And then it's interesting because AI can help build the game, help generate content, and AI can help test the game. So the future of AI is really a mix of traditional and machine learn based systems. So what exactly is traditional versus new? I'm using the term traditional AI to mean non-machine learned AI. For example, like using a B-tree and programmatic state changes, as opposed to new AI, meaning machine learned, so imitation learning or reinforcement learning. So why don't our games just switch over to machine learn based AI right now? Well, games are the primary revenue generator for companies, especially EA, and you don't want to mess with what works. So use caution. You'll want to prototype features and components, and really it helps to understand both technologies. That is, understand the traditional AI in addition to the new machine learned AI. Well, how do we get there? So we really want to focus on the micro AI versus the macro AI. And that's the small set of steps to effectively get there as a whole. Basically, on Madden NFL, for example, we have AI behaviors that drive all the different states and mechanisms that the game AI system will use to play the game. In fact, there are almost 250,000 different individual states or assignments that our AI system can be in. And rather than trying to take a step back and train a generalized AI to know how to play football or a particular position in football, it makes more sense to break it up and focus on the micro rather than that macro. So for example, a running back in American football, he might be trained to understand and learn juking separately from sprinting, separately from identifying a hole in the pocket, identifying all the different other states that he may have to perform. So if on a macro scale, if you were being trained to try and understand all of those at the same time, the learning environment grows significantly, and it quickly becomes much more difficult to manage and maintain that. And so since our game teams really want to minimize the risk, the approach has been to start with the micro and work our way up. So now I want to transition over to talking about the overlap of testing our games and coding our games. And so really this is effectively where I live specifically. And the DTS Nova team, which is my team, our motto is really a practical applications of machine learning for advancing AI for gameplay and testing. So knowledge of the code and the systems help you know where and how to test them. When you write the code, obviously you know how where it's fragile and where it may break. So that is key as well. So as we create new machine learned AI systems, it's going to be important to understand how they work and they fail. So I want to jump into some examples of how we're advancing the gameplay AI and also how we're validating the AI in our tools and test systems as well. So taking a step back, like I alluded to at the top of when I started the presentation, at Electronic Arts as a whole, we're doing many different types of machine learning. So we have AI that helps generate our content. For example, our soccer and football stadiums. We publicly announced that we're working on a new college football game. Well, there are hundreds of football stadiums that we will need to create in the game. And so having an artist, it's many artists and riggers and all different types of technical art people working on constructing those stadiums can take a lot of time. And so we have invested in helping using AI to build those assets, for example. Reinforcement learning, imitation learning, image classification, object detection, NLP, natural language processing, audio classification, and many others as well. So I'll be touching on these. And again, when we get to the discussion section, hopefully you guys aren't shy and we can talk about them some more. All right, so an example of reinforcement learning is from one of our golf games, our golf game. The thought process here is on the verification side to look for exploits and also for stability checks. So reinforcement learning, the agent has the freedom to learn, and we would have one agent per golf hole, and they would play the hole of golf repeatedly over and over again and get to an expert ability level, and then discover hidden exploits, so violations in physics or just missing parts of the level to help them advance and lower their score. So the reward shaping would be a minimization of the golf score, and it, obviously would take time to do that. So the interesting story here is that there was the original use case was just to seek exploits, but what we learned is that in the time it takes to train, when the agent or the golfer isn't very intelligent at the beginning, they're making some really kind of crazy and dumb decisions. Well, that is an outstanding way to also test the game, because the golfer will turn around and hit the ball backwards, for example. Well, that because in the real world, people can do that, and because our bots that actually test the game are using our CPU logic would never do that, we're expanding our test coverage. Rather than having a human have to go and turn around and hit these weird angles or do these crazy things, we're able to augment our automation testing pipeline. And so this was a fantastic, I guess, expansion of the test case of using reinforcement learning. So another example is imitation learning. This comes from some work that I personally was involved with for the Madden NFL team, but the use case is applicable to FIFA and many of our first-person shooters. But the quarterback has, the quarterback AI needs to figure out the question of which wide receiver should I throw the ball to? So who is open? So the same mechanism could be by a ball carrier in FIFA. Which teammate is open that I can complete a pass to? Or in our first-person shooters, which person is a target or not, and can I get to them in a particular amount of time? Well, in our sports games, NFL football and even in FIFA and NHL now, more and more the real-life gameplay, the real-life players have RFID tags embedded in their jerseys and uniforms, and they're generating data that next-gen stats and other companies can use for all different kinds of applications. Well, fortunately, EA, we have access. EA Sports has a relationship with the NFL and some of these organizations, and we're able to have access to this data. So it is a perfect data source, expert data source for imitation learning. And so on the next slide here, I think I've even got a short video so you can see some of it in action. So what I want to kind of show here is just that the decision that the quarterback, in this case, it's Tom Brady, is leaning on the imitation learned model to make the decision on if he should throw to a receiver or not. And the amazing thing here is that it looks like he knows what he's doing. And so that's a big aspect in our gameplay, right? So there can be a lot of cool new tech, but at the end of the day, if the game doesn't look normal or doesn't look right, that in itself is a bug in the game. So the really cool part under the hood is that the imitation model that we generated to do this outperforms our traditional AI. So the mathematical calculations that we have to do, if you can think of shooting vectors out to all the different receivers, and depending on the pass types, so we have lob passes, we have bullet passes, we have standard passes. Those are different arcs that you saw on the previous slide. And so mathematically, they need to be calculated, and it's an expensive calculation to do. So we're excited for the future to see what imitation learning models that outperform our traditional AI, what they can do for us. Moving on. Next, we've got image classification and object detection. So BioWare has been leaning on a lot of object detection to look for anomalies in the games they make. We've also, on the sports side, been using object detection to train models to look for assets in the game or look for anomalies. And so there is a whole brand new set of technology being rolled out to our games, not just our sports games, but all of our games, where we are able to leverage all of the different output from our automation from our games. And some of that output isn't just numerical data or key value pair data, it is image and video. And so we're able to use these ML-based tools to help the extra sets of eyeballs to look for anomalies. And the anomalies can be in the form of missing logos on helmets or missing logos on shoes, or are the colors correct for this particular sports team? Those can have big, huge impacts, and those are bugs that we have to deal with in the game. And so since our titles ship on the sports side, at least every year, for the most part, this is a huge opportunity for us to get a big return on investment from generating these ML models. So here I just wanted to kind of continue and just say that natural language processing and some of the other ML numerical processing techniques are also being used. They do provide value, but the low-hanging fruit still is right now like on the graphics and rendering side. But there are people that are using a lot of the other ML tech around the company. And then I'm getting close to 20 minutes on my presentation, so I want to try and wrap it up soon. But I wanted to kind of, again, touch on working at EA. So I'll transition to that. Really the skills that I'm looking for and that we need across the company are strong C++ skills. And also the AI and machine learning is a big part of that. If you are an expert C++ programmer, that's great. We need those. But for those that have the background that many of you have in the machine learning and AI space, are going to be huge, very valuable, I should say. I personally like to look for embedded or real-time programmers because that type of software is really geared around performance. Performance is something very important in the games, like I talked about earlier in the presentation around the type of software games are. They need to be performant. We need to run at 60 frames a second, so that limits the amount of math you can do in a given frame. We don't want the game to hitch or stutter. The game needs to be stable. It needs to perform. And then since some of these games ship every year, it needs to be maintainable. So, with good, strong software engineering knowledge, being able to keep our games maintainable is quite important. Quick learners. When I first started at EA, yes, I was a software engineer. Yes, I knew how to program. But you'd come into work one day and it's, hey, I need you to go work on this, and it's written in Python. Well, I'd never done Python, but you just go figure it out. You learn it quick. You acclimate and adjust and then help contribute. And then lastly, character skills, integrity, having the ability to actually do the work. Being nice is always good. Inclusive, are all great values as well. And then what it's like. So, I want to also call out that EA, we make games, yes, but there's also a lot of work that we do that aren't directly related to games. We still have business analysts, we still have marketing teams, we still have finance teams, and in many cases they write software or need software written. So there are many opportunities at EA that are outside of the gaming area. And I'll be happy to talk about those. I list out some, we've got security, we have localization where we are actually using some NLP to do real-time translation and cool things like that. We have quality engineering teams. We have tools that need to be written to support all the different games that we have. Big data. We have a ton of telemetry coming out of our games and video footage, and they have to be stored in cloud databases and cloud systems, which need to scale and are very large. So there's all kinds of software outside of the game side that we do as well. And then I call out for the dev teams, which include our mobile teams as well. We have gameplay, graphics, online, client server, and on and on. So there's a lot of cool software that you can work on. And really, that I want to wrap it up right there and jump into the questions, because I would like to keep this informal. And so let you guys open it up to ask Alex and I any questions you have about ML and AI, or what it's like to work at EA, in any one of our studios as well. I think we both have a good amount of experience and can touch on that. So with that, I will wrap it up. And however, Gail, you would like to open it up, feel free if there's any format or process to how you'd like
Sure.
to.
Right on time.
Yeah.
Bill, thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Justin.
Yeah, thanks, Bill and Alex. That was very, very interesting to hear about how EA was using artificial intelligence and a lot of the processes of game development and verification and everything else. I had one question myself, and then I'll let anyone else that has questions go for it. And so I was kind of curious, coming from more the research perspective, what does research look like at a huge game studio like EA? Like, what type of problems are you trying to solve? What's the day-to-day life, or like, what's it like doing research at a games company?
Yeah, so great question. We have a lot of research that we do. In fact, we have an entire organization, SEED, which if you can Google them, they have, I believe it's 4 pillars. And one of those 4 pillars is to present papers and to speak and to kind of take some of our work and open source it. So that is pretty exciting. So that is an area where it's kind of both public and internal. We have a lot of, to answer your question on the really cool stuff, we have a lot of stuff internally that we do. I am on a special interest group steering committee for machine learning and AI. And we had a monthly presentation yesterday where one of our PhDs that's working out of Europe from our DICE studio presented on his PhD thesis work around connecting facial animations and gesturing. So around natural language processing and the ability to have an agent as they're speaking, being able to articulate with their hands and having it sync up and look normal and non-robotic and whatnot. So that's just one area. We have tons of, well, we have a lot of PhDs. I don't know a number to give you a count, but working on, again, the animation side, rendering, security. Like we have people that are trying to detect the cheaters, and there are statistical and mathematical models that can be brought in around that, and are working on cool ideas and concepts there. So they really get access to, we have these big pools of data, in our cloud locations, and they have the ability to access that data and then really do a lot of research and work, which I think they enjoy and appreciate, because like for FIFA and Madden, we have had about 20 years of instrumenting our code and adding telemetry. So we generate a ton of data. And to put it into perspective, for example, in Madden, every day we generate around 10,000 hours of video footage from our bots and our automated gameplay mechanisms. And in addition to that video footage, we have a ton of key value pair telemetry, numerical, textual data that comes out of the game. And so that in combination with the real world, like NFL next gen stats data, provide researchers just tons of information that they could hook into to test and validate things.
Well, thank you so much. Sorry.
Yeah, I was actually going to piggyback on that too, in that, and I apologize for my change of surroundings. I had a power outage in the middle of Bill's presentation, so I hope things went well there. But in terms of also, I think Bill's describing like what research when you work for us looks like, but there's also the option too of working with us, and this is where some of these partnership engagements come in. We've done in the past many NSERC and MyTax type engagements that allow you to come on site, work on a problem in support of a thesis or an interest area that addresses a need, that EA has, but there isn't necessarily a long-term expectation of us fully productizing that solution or doing it as a long-term engagement, although we're often very happy to hire as many of these research students that we get through those purposes as well. I mentioned I have done work with the National Research Council of Canada in the past as well. That's a bit less hands-on, and my preference does tend to be towards more like the university engagement, because there you get to actually come on site and work directly with us, and it's much more collaborative. And I will re-emphasize, over the next few years, there is that NSERC Create grant that the U of A has recently got, and BioWare and EA are committed partners in that. So that's a great avenue for getting in and potentially working on some research with us as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
I think, Justin, we have time for probably 2 more questions. Oh, I see Matthew's hand is up. Matthew, do you want to go?
Sure. I have a very selfish question that comes directly off of that. Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm an assistant professor here at the University of Alberta in the Computing Science Department. How do we get in contact with you about talking about potential collaborations? You're talking about the Create Grant and MyTax and so on and so forth.
You know what? You can email me at alexlucas@bioware.com. That's the best way to get started. And I don't know if they're still on the call, but I think I saw Craig Chapman and Scott Stone's name in the meeting attendee list. And there are a couple folks that we're currently in a MyTax engagement with as well right now. So you can talk to them about some of the experience, but really let's get some conversations going and see if we can make something happen.
Outstanding. So Alex, you're right. I do see on the chat Scott Stone put some information there. And Matthew. Alex, if you want to put your contact information in the chat, that might help too. That would be lovely.
I'm stuck on my phone, so bear with me. The power outage totally sent me for a bit of a loop. Let me see.
No problem, Alex. I can put your information in the chat if that's easier.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Happy to do so. Raphael, do you have a question?
Yes. Thanks for a very interesting talk. So I had one question about. Could you give some more details on how do you make the imitation learning to work? Like what data do you use for that? And also, if you could answer shortly, what ML techniques do you use for like games, like strategy games? For instance, personally, I played Lord of the Rings. I like more strategy games, so from EA. So I was curious. Thanks.
Sure. So let's see. The first one, imitation learning in the data. So the NFL Next Gen Stats is really where we get a lot of our data that we're training our models. And we are still, this is really a lot still research, and prototyping is where we're at. We have also experimented with using our actual existing AI to generate data. So a combination of both of those. I know that, for example, on the FIFA team, they, I believe it was in FIFA 22, they wanted to augment the data that they had. And so they actually rented out a soccer stadium in Europe and hired a bunch of professional players and then instrumented them with RFID tags, and then played a soccer game, an entire game, to generate data so that they could use that. And they used it, they're using it for all kinds of different things, mainly right now to improve animations and so they can focus on a particular, whether it's a corner kick or whether it's a particular offensive play, and have actual data from real life acceleration curves and real life positional information, and to build more hyper realistic animations in the game. So it's very exciting. And like I mentioned in our talk, we've discovered that some of our more complicated mathematical calculations can be augmented or maybe even substituted in the future completely with IL-based calculations. So that's an exciting area of where we're looking towards the future to do some cool things as well. The second part of your question around the strategy games, I don't know what all game teams are doing. There are 3 or 4 different internal conferences. We have dev conferences, we have AI conferences that are internal for our employees. And in many cases, they will present different things they're doing, but I've seen some experimentation with reinforcement learning and setting up micro behaviors to try and do some gameplay strategy type work. How that's made it into any production systems, I don't know, just to be honest.
I see. Thank you.
No problem.
I see that Mike T has a question.
Hi, yeah, thanks for your presentation. So I guess this is less concerned with games and more about the machine learning and making better animations. Do you have any concerns at all or thoughts at all about the quality of deep fakes and stuff like that to use to make fake videos? Like if you guys get really good at making this, hyper realistic animations, do you think there's any concerns of it being misused at all? Thank you.
That's a good question. I think the answer is yes, and I guarantee there are people thinking about that. I know I worked on a project with one of our other partner central teams. We co-presented at one of our internal conferences last year, and it had to do with in our Need for Speed game, it's a car racing game where you have the users can generate their own content and they can upload art and reskin their vehicle. Well, as you can imagine, that opens up the freedom for a lot of non-suitable for work images and things to happen. Anything from nudity to hate to violent depictions and on and on. So we worked on using machine learning and specifically Jason, he worked on using machine learning to create object detectors and classifiers to detect when certain content would be uploaded. And he did that by a means of using existing models. There are existing non-suitable for work ML models out there, and then leverage transfer learning to append onto it. And so just from that point of view, I know as a whole, Electronic Arts does care about that deeply. And one of our corporate values is, the player experience. And so we're very concerned about things being misrepresented or misconstrued. So yeah, I know we have people thinking about it. The future as the technology is being created and invented around us, a lot of times we have to adapt fast. But yeah, we're definitely thinking about it.
There are best practices in that space around the world, and everyone's learning in real time. So
That's right. Yeah.
great to hear that you're part of these, external forums as well as any leader would. So both Bill and Alex, any advice to the young, the future, right? So the young people, whether they're in undergraduate, masters, PhDs programs that want to be part of what's happening at BioWare and EA Games. You have some great skill sets. I love the fact that you focused on value. on values, integrity. You want to be able to obviously count on people having shared values, shared mission. So any overall comments that you'd like to make to our audience today? Over to you, Bill and Alex.
Alex, go ahead. I'll let you start.
Okay, I'll speak more towards the undergrads, maybe in the audience, but this applies for anyone. You can get a job in games if that's what you want, and that wasn't something I always believed possible when I was young and going through university. It always felt like that's a job those people do over there. It's like going to Hollywood. And the reality is, you've seen with BioWare and other game studios popping up in Edmonton here, these jobs are next door and we're interested in you. And in terms of just kind of proving that you're ready to come work for a game company, show us you can do something hard. At the end of the day, I used to give a lot of talks at universities throughout the States, and it was all about, first, making sure everyone understood that, like Bill said, not all the jobs are directly working on the games. You don't have to be an artist or whiz-bang game designer. There's a lot of roles, but what is required is an adaptability and a courage to handle or take on difficult problems. So pick one and make that your showcase piece, and we'll absolutely be interested. And yeah, getting your foot in the door isn't as hard as it might seem.
Great advice there. To maybe try and surround that with more advice, which is difficult. Yeah, I've always been a believer in hard work and being driven. And so you can't go wrong if you have that in your skill set. Being aware of the fact that our software needs to be performant, as I touched on in the presentation, is an area where if you have a comfort in writing software, that's great, but maybe understand how you can measure, you can instrument your code and measure your code as far as how it performs, and not being scared to learn new technologies, new abilities of where software is going, and yeah, if you stick with that, you're off to a good start. I'm trying to stretch my brain here on some different some practical advice, but those are just a few key things right there.
What do you think of hackathons, since we're on the topic of being able to show that you can work hard and do cool things?
Great, yeah, build your skills, and yeah, there's a lot of value in those. Absolutely.
Yeah, we run them internally for our own staff as well, and we see a lot of value there.
Yep.
Excellent. So that's something you can put on a resume then, or on a LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and yeah, especially if you're going for a programming position, put source code you're proud of up on GitHub or somewhere where we can take a look at it.
Excellent. Justin, anything else to add or ask?
I didn't have any other questions on my end. This is all really interesting stuff though, so really appreciate your time.
Well, outstanding presentation, both Alex and Bill, and thank you to BioWare and EA Games, both for presenting today and at other seminars, and for being on the University of Alberta's Industry Advisory Board, together with companies like Intuit and IBM and Scotiabank and many others. So very outstanding. I'd say, Niraj, do you have any closing comments? I'm not sure if you're taking individual sessions after today's session for people to speak with BioWare.
No, I think we are not taking today's individual sections, but thanks to Bill and Alex for wonderful presentation and insightful discussion. There is one request in the chat box from Daryl, that if you could please put your email in the chat box, that would be wonderful for people to connect on for one-on-one meetings or if they have questions or anything else to discuss with you.
And perhaps they can link in as well to Alex and Bill. That might be easier too. And I did put Alex's email in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, LinkedIn works great for me.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll just share Alex's email again so that if anyone needs.
And I will recommend to all students or job seekers of any sort, work on your LinkedIn profile, because that is your professional face, and really it's easy to do and of great value, and you extend your networks. So this is a connection. Our company showcase is a connection to the professional world, and that's my top piece of advice to anyone at any age. So
yeah, I need to do it too. I'll be honest. I need to do it too. My LinkedIn is way out of date. So
less pressure on you because you have a job, but very kind of you to take the pressure off everyone else. So
don't feel bad. It's not
outstanding. Yes, and don't wait till it's perfect. Get out there, and you can always continuously improve, right? Which is what we're all doing in life, right? All right, with that, it's a wrap. Thank you, everyone, and join us next week, because I think Intuit is here next week. Is that right, Justin and Neeraj?
Yes, that's correct, and we are waiting for the information from them. So thank you, everyone, for joining in today. We will see you next week.
All right, a pleasure, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.